Thank you, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at in the world today. So, welcome. Though hopefully today this will be both fun and fun, entertaining, as well as instructional for the team, that's on the call. And as Kristen said, I'll cover in the next slide. The inspiration for this talk is actually from a song called "Losing My Religion." But before we start this, my name is Darren Shelcusky, and I'm a manager at Ford Motor Company in our Vehicle Connected Cybersecurity organization. So my worries are about our products. So we think about our vehicles and things that you as a consumer interact with the vehicle, whether it be our mobile apps or things such as Alexa or other types of automation and things that you as a consumer use, not only our products that we sell, but things that interact with our products. So securing those types of assets for the company. And no surprise, APIs are a very important part of that. So before we get into here, there's why did I title this is there's a song from a group called REM, and they get the credit for this, called "Losing My Religion." And it's really about unrequited love. And as someone who's in cybersecurity, I can relate to that very much. When I work with our development communities, our product teams, our partners, usually, cybersecurity isn't the first thing they want to come to their mind. And when the security is coming to talk to them, it's not like there's not a lot of love felt there. So in many ways, it's a good theme for this on this. And in the song, at the end of the day, "Losing My Religion" means, it's also in the US an acronym for something called "I'm at my wit's end." I can't take it anymore. And that's really the song, is about, and that's really what this talks about. And how do you avoid getting to that wit's end, and losing your religion, so to speak, be able to do that. So, and I'm going to share with you things that work and things that don't work in a large multinational company. Ford operates all around the world in all markets. We sell around the world. We manufacture. We all the things that a global enterprise does, which sometimes when you go to scale and many teams all over the world, there are challenges that come with that, especially for an API program. So I like to start a little bit of fun here. It's like, if you've ever seen this, everyone's watched cartoons or seen things about the snowball effect, and there is a cybersecurity snowball effect. As development communities, as product teams, we have all the different things that come together. Everything from new developers, we introduce open source, we start APIs, we introduce agile development techniques, we bring the cloud in, DevOps, and now SecDevOps. Eventually, if you don't manage this, you're going to hit a point of no return. Okay. So, and this is Darren, the cybersecurity professional, trying to not to get run over by the snowball. But eventually it gets too late. It's going to catch up with you. I don't care if you're a small company, a medium company, a large company. Ignoring these things, not addressing them, will end up in a security breach. There's a presentation I have for another one there, but people may or may not realize that cybercrime is more profitable than the global drug trade. Consider that fact. And APIs are important because guess what? Criminals are going to go to where the data is. And where is the data at today? It's in our APIs. So when that breach happens, here's Darren out there, using the song "That's Me in the Corner," and I'll have a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day as a result of when there's a breach, and it's a point, it's like, my gosh, I'm losing my religion. I can't take it anymore. This is what we're trying to avoid, that how can we stop this, to getting to this point as a company, as a development team. And everyone may be a different spot. The question I always ask is, how do you prevent an API dumpster fire? If you're new to this, you may inherit something like this. Okay. If you're, depending on where you're at in your maturity as an organization and developing, marketing, making APIs available, not only to your internal developers, but to your customers, your clients, build that. How do you prevent this from happening? In reality, for many companies, especially companies, that have been predominantly manufacturing companies, API cybersecurity, has not been a priority. If you're a software company and that's all you do is software, you're maybe in a different space where something that, you're a manufacturing company that's grown into software. Why is this important? Very simple. Thieves go to where the data is, and APIs provide vectors that attackers can easily exploit. They're going to get most bang for the buck. And as an industry, the OWASP API Security Top 10, honestly, it's still relatively new. It was only released, less than at the end of 2019. So it's really, we're only a little over a year into having these well-defined OWASP API Security Top 10 to as an industry, as software professionals, to begin to be able to address. So when you take a company forward that's global and had a large enterprise, lots of businesses, these are how we kind of think. How do we approach these questions? So, I'm an engineer by training. That doesn't come across into that. And so I think of things called failure modes. Okay. And in a global enterprise, what are the failure modes for API security? When it fails, how will it fail? And then you next ask the question, well, when it fails, what are the consequences of those failures? And then obviously the last part is, as a global entity or company, how can we prevent, prevention and remediate these failures? So when they happen, how to remediate, but more importantly, how do we prevent them from happening to begin with? So these are some of the things that, organizations do. I'll start coming up in the next one. Different approaches to security. You're going to see that some of them will work, some of them may not work as well. So you can, put yourself in this place and answer for the company that you're part of, how do you address it? First approach, I call this a whack-a-mole approach to API security. Okay. So as we find a problem, we fix a problem. Okay. So, there's Darren there throwing snowballs. Okay. Knock that out. I found this problem. Well, with anything, if you've ever played the game whack-a-mole, you hit it with the mallet and another one pops up. And over time, their speed and number escalates as you try hitting them, trying to keep up. And at some point, you realize there's no hope of winning the game because the moles are going to come quicker than you can ever whack them down. And the same thing with this analogy. You'll never have enough snowballs, to attack to address the people. And as a result, if you don't do that, you'll have a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, and you will have breaches. So again, this is an approach. It'll work for a while, but ultimately this approach will fail. The next attempt, okay, we're going to monitor everything. Okay. And there's a quote on there I love. It's notoriously difficult to prove the absence of something. Okay. I'm working in security now. I haven't done that for my career. In fact, it's a relatively new part of my career. I've been in software and development for a large portion of my career. And in security, we're like the boy that cried wolf. We're looking for wolves. Okay. I'm out there in the snow looking for tracks. I see a wolf was here, or a wolf may have passed by. And from the perspective of a product team or developer, in the fable, like the boy who cried wolf, we seem like a prophet of woe. We always see wolves, but you as a developer, you as a, in a product team, you don't see the wolves. Okay. Now, you're smart. We all know that wolves exist and that they're dangerous, but you know what? Until they attack us, when I come as a security professional to talk to you, the guidance of security professionals like me, it's often reduced to hyperbole. It's like, yeah, that's, that happened. Why would you do that? Meanwhile, you have all these motivated attackers out here that are trying to get to our APIs. Because why? Cybercrime is profitable, and the APIs are where the data is and the money to be made. So that's the first part of it. So while you can monitor everything, you'll never have enough monitors. You'll never have enough people to respond to the monitors. Your signal to noise ratio, you're going to see lots of noise, and you'll end up with the boy, like that story of the fable of the boy who cried wolf. And it's like, I don't believe you anymore because the monitors that you tell me, you're giving me all these false positives. So be very careful when you do the monitoring. Make sure that it's appropriate level of monitoring. Second is try mandating policy and standards for everything. Okay. Policy and standards aren't bad. They're good. We have them at Ford. Okay. But a policy and a standard is not enough. Okay. They're great. They're very helpful and good, but they're only effective when employees, they understand them and they use it in the development process, meaning it's baked in not only development process, it's part of my pipeline, it's part of our release, it's part of all the normal things. Because as soon as it gets something that's out of what I normally do, my day-to-day activities, it becomes something very forgotten very quickly. Again, key is automation and making it part of the pipeline, part of the standards. Otherwise, while they're great, they'll fail, and then you're going to catch it when the auditors come around and talk to you and say, hey, you're going to get, are you going to get a major audit comment because you didn't follow this standard, or you're not following this policy. By that time, it's too late. So the next approach is, the top-down management. Try a command and control approach to API security. Okay, do this because I said so. And it can work to a point, but realistically, from a leadership perspective, leaders who insist that their teams follow their decisions without question, honestly, you lose a lot of learnings, a lot of constructive feedbacks that could make our products better, that could make our process better, or even change the company for the better. So if it's truly just that, because I said so, because I'm the manager of security and I said so, it'll work. It may work sometimes, but it's not a truly effective way to do it. Okay. Because many organizations have adopted agile product teams that are not hierarchical. The team is accountable. The team is making decisions. So there is a balance between this command and control and the agile, and it can very easily get out of balance. Next approach is to try fear. Yeah, and people who've been in the API industry for any length of time have heard the Jeff Bezos API mandate. Anyone who doesn't do this will be fired. Now, obviously, this approach worked for Amazon, mandate, fear. But honestly, if you're on a mission to introduce API security in your company, while this mandate can be helpful, defining the outcomes of the department, you may not always be able to use this, the stick versus the carrot method. So you want to use this when you have to, when it makes sense, but fear, while being a motivator, it's a short-term motivator. It's uncomfortable. It's powerful, but it's a very negative motivator, and you do not want to use that. You want this to become part of who the team are, built into their DNA, built into the pipeline, built into their team norms and the rules. Okay. Other thing is fear. You go back and say the policies. I make the policies and you follow them. I'm sure you've had the case for emotional outbursts by managers or other security folks and potentially in your company. But if that invokes another emotional reaction like fear, no one benefits. Again, this is something, times it's useful, but you really don't want to have it doing this by fear. Governance, big companies love governance. I mean, governance is necessary because, as you can imagine, we have lots of teams in many countries, in many different products work on things. So, having some order is important, but governance and agile can be at odds with each other. Okay. Governance checkpoints can wreak havoc on an agile team, as it's often incompatible with work done in an iterative manner. So if everything got to go through governance, and governance is like, well, we can't get together because we only meet once a month, and you're going to be fifth on the docket and you get 5 minutes to state your case or whatever it may be, that can wreak havoc on the process. There's a place for governance, and I'll tell you how that works, to be successful. But if you run it through how traditional governance works in large companies, you're likely to slow down the velocity of the product team and potentially result in failures. So if you follow these things, that I just showed you, there's consequences. Okay. As a security professional, you get either one of two things. You get ignored, or something I call malicious obedience. Okay. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it to the letter of the law, and it's going to be malicious intent. Okay. Yeah. And I'm sure, I'm guaranteed people who are on this call that are either security professional developers never heard this statement that our product is late because of cybersecurity. That never happens anywhere. So cybersecurity is always a good thing. It's always welcomed, and it's, it's never shunned or shut out with that. But this is what we're trying to avoid. Okay. If you do the things that in the manner that I approach on this will happen. You will get shunned. Okay. And eventually you have this. Okay. Developers are gonna put a firewall up between themselves and the security teams. Because here's a security person, and I'm sure someone at a point in time, you've gotten an email or a note or an IM from someone saying, hey, you have to remediate this because our checker found it. We ran it through this great automated checking tool and it found this thing. Okay. That's going back to the boy who cried wolf. It may or may not be meaningful. It may or may not be adequate or whatever the case may be. But if all you do is throw that over the wall to the developers, you're going to get, yeah, okay, we'll put the security stuff in our backlog. We'll get to it eventually, and eventually never comes around. So from the perspective of developers or product developers, they're resistant to creating an API security program for fear of being slowed down in delivering their products. They're measured on their velocity. They're measured on, all these different things around a product team. And you come in security and you just lob things over the wall, do this, because I said so. A lot of friction between that. And it doesn't have to be this way. Remember, as a developer, we're primarily concerned with automation, reliability, speed, continuous improvement, having a collaborative culture, okay, and really getting the best out of the products that we develop. So there's balances on there, and I guarantee you, I said at some point in time, if you in your career, you've shut people out, you froze them out, or put a firewall between them because they're not being helpful to you. So how do you, as a security professional or product team, how do you prevent being, that cybersecurity snowball crushing you, and actually build a snowman? I'm going to give you the recipe on how to build a snowman, okay? Because really, realistically, you must address this systemically, okay? Team, if you're going to be successful, you must involve beyond the whack-a-mole approach to security and be more strategic and systemic. Because if you don't have this, you will be constantly doing the whack-a-mole and fighting those dumpster fires that come up. So API security is a balancing act. Anything you're going to do in your career, when in regard to software, there's three peoples involved. There's the people aspect, often neglected. There's the process aspect. So large companies, we love processes. We have a process for everything. And there's a technology aspect. Is it technology capable? Is it fast? Is it integrated into all these things like that? And when those are out of balance, okay, you get what happens on the right, okay? You're going to fall off your stool. The bad guys, the abominable snowmans are out there ready to attack you, okay, because you've gotten out of balance. And the one thing I actually going to tell you, it's like cybersecurity is not a security problem. It's a shared business responsibility. Unless these people, the processes and technologies work together to manage risk, okay? That is so important. If you don't do that, you're going to waste a lot of money. If you focus on the technology and you ignore the people and process, you will fail. If you focus on the process, ignore the people and the technology, you will fail. If you focus on two of them, you'll still fail. It's only balancing the trio of those three things that you can successfully create an API security program in any size organization. Product teams are collaborative in nature, okay? You actually have to listen and collaborate with them. Okay? There's a great quote I love here, Bob Lewis. If he writes blogs, if you have never read his stuff, I strongly recommend it. But relationships precede processes and outlive transactions, okay? In that way, you may win the battle, but you lose the war. Security success depends far more on working relationship than are any of the most important achievements. If you don't have the working relationships, you're not going to have ongoing success. And in a large company, or even a small company for that matter, organizations are nothing more than collections of relationships. When the relationships are good, everything can work. And if you don't have these good relationships, nothing will work. No different than for API security program. So the relationship with the product teams are very, very important. You got to roll up your sleeves and become part of the solution, okay? But on the development side, and I don't appreciate unfunded mandates are manual security mandates. So I have all this work that I need to do and get done, and here you are, security. You put more snow on me, and I only have a shovel, so I'm never going to get my work done. Okay, so as a result, many times they come in, our checker found this, go fix it, and you got 48 hours to do it. Okay. Security to be successful in any company, again, the balance of people, process, and technology, we got to find ways to eliminate manual work wherever possible and augment manual efforts with automation. It's only through automation that the team can maintain their velocity, their quality, and do all the things necessary to deliver a quality as well as a quality product. And one of the measures of quality is being a secure product. So automation is very, very important. It's easy to do the one. It's easy for me to throw it over the wall and just say, do it. I don't care what it means to you. Any professional, not just a security professional developer, your most important skill is going to be is empathy. It's not your coding approaches or anything else like that. It's empathy. Empathy is the ability to share one else's feelings, perhaps the most important traits that we as humans demonstrate. We are not resources or anything else like that. We are human beings that do development, software development. It's an heavy intellectual skills required. Okay. And people have good days, they have bad days, they have hopes, they have dreams, all these things like that. Resources, computers don't have hopes, dreams, good days, bad days. They're a piece of technology, but we are people. Always remember that in a case like that. One of the things I know at Ford that product teams get, you'll get an earful if you refer to people, as a resource, or they're just a resource on the team. Okay, they're not a resource, they're a person. Okay, so the secret sauce for security program, here's the key: is empathy. Because if you're truly honest, even in agile things, and I've heard this from many agile coaches, it's not agile that's the problem or anything else like that. Human interactions are at the heart of most issues, even in an agile team or agile product, whatever the capability. So going back to the relationships, these are very, very important. And empathy is going to be your most important skill to help you to get this done. So what are we doing at Ford to strengthen our API security posture? Okay. First of all is I'm not managing security, I'm managing business risks. Okay. So how do you do that? Know your inventory. If you don't know it's out there, this may sound fundamental, but in a large enterprise such as Ford Motor Company, things can get lost pretty easily. Okay, teams can go out on their own and go rogue or doing things and great intentions, but all of a sudden you find out, oh my gosh, now we have lots of security problems. So get a handle on your inventory. Audit your sensitive APIs. Everyone's heard about sensitive data and APIs, PII, SPII. There's lots of names to be able to do it, but if you've followed anything about security breaches or whatnot, you want to pay more attention to the ones that, if that data is disclosed, would be a bad thing for the company, front page news and whatnot. Okay, so not that all other APIs aren't important, but again, you want to make sure that you understand your sensitive APIs. And more important than anything else, those are the ones that are doing all the necessary steps. Attack the OWASP API top 10. Hopefully people on this call that's something they're familiar with. And if not, go out and check. OWASP makes some great material, a lot of good items out there. There's tools. Again, 42 Crunch is one of many tools, and one that we use at Ford to attack our OWASP API top 10. Trust but verify. Again, this is very, very important. You have to trust your teams to do the right thing, but we're human. Sometimes people hit a deadline, we make mistakes, whatever the case may be. Sometimes things happen. So you want to make sure that you can verify it. So when those things happen, they can be found either before release or remediated quickly. And then go to the outside world. Don't assume that you as a company know everything. So things such as coordinated disclosure and bug bounties. Invite the good people to help you find your stuff. You'd be surprised and amazed if you don't have a coordinated disclosure bug bounty in your company, the things that you can learn from that. Most important, okay, for any security program, you have to make the right thing, build security into your product, the easiest thing to do. If you make it difficult, people will try to get around you. They'll put the firewall up around you. They'll get thrown in the backlog, and yeah, we'll get to it later and whatnot. So how do you make the right thing the easiest thing to do? Okay. First and foremost, automate, automate, automate. Okay. So these are some of the examples of things that we are doing as a company, and there's more, but to give you an idea, a complete API catalog. Okay. You can't manage what you don't know. Self-service onboarding and publishing. If you've looked in the industry, there's a time for a first time to hello world as a metric, and we measure it for outside developers, but inside the company, we treat our internal developers as second-class citizens. It's like, oh, well, you got to follow this process and get this approval and whatnot. So something as easy, I just want to consume your API to make my product better, becomes a 30-day process to get on to consuming an API. Self-service onboarding and self-service publishing. Okay, you shouldn't have to say, well, let me give it to you and put it in the queue and maybe you'll publish it next week. Empowering the teams to do it themselves. Again, automation important. Trust but verify. Okay, allow the teams to develop it and give them the tools to verify it themselves. Okay, have checkpoints, don't get me wrong. I mean, you're still going to security occasionally check and probe, but that should be secondary. The primary is the teams, trust the teams, give them the tools to verify it. Focus on API quality. Okay, one of the things that Ford and 42 Crunch have been very helpful on this is quality. The Swagger document, that is your contract. As a consumer of API, honestly, I don't care if it's in a microservice. I don't care if it's a web service. I don't care if you wrote it in Python or it's running in a container. I just want to consume it. I want to make my product better. Okay. So how do you do that? Well, is a good Swagger document or a good open API document. And when it's terrible, guess what? It will not work if a team you have to go to the developers' APIs, and every time someone wants on board, let's have a meeting so we can discuss how to consume it. So we can tell you how to use our API. An analogy I make in the company is like, think about it with Google, someone like Google Maps. Okay. Do you think Google would measure it as success as every developer who wanted to onboard to use their Google Maps APIs had to schedule meetings with the Google developers? It doesn't scale. It doesn't work. I mean, it's horrible. But yet in a big company, sometimes we do that. So having that mindset of API quality, which includes the Swagger and the documentation, is fundamental. Automated governance. I mentioned earlier, governance is important to make sure that put on there, but how do you automate it? So example, we do it for, just to give an idea. No, and this is no pun intended, we have an API to publish our APIs. The good news is that gives a choke point that everything goes through, so we can put automation into that process. We run things such as a linter to check with it. We can do 42 Crunch to get a security audit score, okay? And make sure that, if you don't have a minimum security audit score, you're not ready to publish yet, okay? And you can do it depending on your company. You can do it at a warning level. You can actually stop it depending on what works for your company or what the potential risk is, but you automate that. You don't have to say, have a meeting with Darren now, get on Darren's calendar in 2 weeks, and Darren will give you permission to whether or not you can publish it. Not a good process, not a good way to do it. Cover that on API quality is API documentation and first-class artifact. Why would you treat your internal developers any different than paying customers? If you have your APIs and you're charging and making revenue on it, why do you treat your internal developers any different? You shouldn't. Because you know what? Because probably the majority of your developers are internal developers consuming your APIs. So don't treat them like second-class citizens. An API style guide, we have one. It's great to have it, but you actually got to use it. Okay. A style guide in name only is just that. It's a document or a website that will sit out there and gather proverbial dust. So use it. Do roadshows, help people to do it, to understand, why this is important. Educate. And don't, you constantly do it, because in an enterprise as large as Ford, at any given time, there's new people coming and going all the time. They have no clue that we have a style guide or anything else like that. Someone we just hired out of college, why would they? Or if we hire, someone who with 10 years experience or 20 years experience, again, they know how to do APIs, but well, how does Ford do it? Don't assume that someone coming into your organization just going to pick this stuff up and know it. Why would they? Same thing for an API standard. Again, very important, but you actually got to follow it. Okay, and that means education, road shows, all the things necessary to make people aware on how to consume it, why it's important. Okay, you want to monitor the API health using SRE principles, reliability engineering principles. So this is something that Google has put out into that. It's really, really good. But you look at Ford, we look at things for APIs called the Ford Golden Signals. What is a 95% percentile for response time and things like that? So meaningful metrics. You can get inundated with metrics, and most of them will have no meanings. So look, using SRE principles, you get the vital few metrics that will truly tell you about the health, the quality of the products that you've done. And then finally, make API security artifacts a first-class deliverable. They got to be. If you don't do that, you're kidding yourself. Just like documentation, the artifacts have to be first-class deliverable. And this is, again, I truly believe, I said, having been in Ford for my career, a quote from Henry Ford: if it doesn't add value, it's waste. Look at everything in your process. If I am, as a security professional, asking the developers to do things and there's no value, it's pure waste. Eliminate it. That's how you get better, eliminating waste. If you do these things, then as a security professional, only then, will you earn respect and trust of the developer community in your organization. Okay. Why is security viewed negative in many companies? Okay. It's often a result of security dictating rules, workflows, tools on developers. You do this because I said so. Just do it and be quiet, instead of creating strong partnerships, common goals, and tools that seamlessly integrate into the development tool chain. There's no magic to it. This is what you got to do. Is it hard work? Absolutely. But the result of that hard work, it's going to take time, dedication, and a plan. You just don't do these things. Okay. Why is this important? APIs in many companies, Ford's no different, have evolved from what had been an obscure technical term for developers to the backbone of many companies' digital transformation. Okay, Ford, we have our digital transformation. We have an automotive ecosystem. You probably couldn't imagine how many things that we have, to make it happen. And APIs are a very important part of our digital transformation. And for many companies, it's a major source of their income. There are companies out there that are just pure API companies. That's how they make all their money, by licensing their intellectual property through APIs. And that's how they become a source of innovation for the companies. But that doesn't happen offhand. You don't build a snowman, just by start building snowman. You have a plan on how you're going to get there. And yes, with the hard work, but the results are worth it. And being in this, I still say the biggest challenge still today in security is raising awareness of the risks. Okay, because again, I'll go back to the previous slide. I, as a security professional, I see lots of wolves. Most developers don't see those wolves. Part of it is educating people on that the wolves exist, and they are dangerous. And sometimes you got to show them the wolves. Okay, it's like, we had a wolf attack here. Companies generally don't always, highlight their bad news when we had a breach or anything else like that, for good reasons to do that. But sometimes internally, you got to show people in a way that, we had a wolf attack here. You may not have known about it, but the wolf did attack and cause some damage. Okay, they may not have attacked your thing, but they've attacked someone else. Now, where we're at today for many companies and organizations, APIs now are one of the crown jewels of many modern businesses. So we need to take the time and effort and use tools such as 42Crunch and other things to improve the security posture of these products, such that they will not only be the crown jewel for the businesses, but major sources of revenue, bringing customers aboard, and helping your prospective company deliver on their mission, whatever that mission may be. So I'll hold the question till the end after Isabel talks, but again, again, thank you for everyone, and I appreciate it. I hope this was entertaining and informative.
Thanks a lot, Darren. Fantastic indeed. You can just stop sharing the screen and I can share mine. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I think, I couldn't explain better, and I think this is such fantastic alignment with how we work and what is the actual way of doing security we want to push on the market, right? And if there is one thing you can say is, if we look at our customers' work today, right, what do we see? So we have Ford and we have many other companies, and they're not at the same level of maturity in terms of how they approach security. And what we see is other people I've been doing this, what I call the artisanal way, which means they had a few APIs, maybe 3, 4, 5, and a few developers, and they were not changing that often, so the analogy here with the post-its is really about password management, right? When we started working on, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we probably didn't have as many passwords all over the internet as we have now. And we were coping, many people, with like having little post-it, right? And putting the password on it and then plugging it on the wall or on the computer. And then more and more things popped up. So then you have two approaches. One is I'm using the same password everywhere. Then I have only one to remember. I don't even have and need the post-its. Or I'm starting putting different passwords everywhere. And then suddenly, very quickly, it becomes what we're seeing on the screen right now, which is a flurry of post-its and things to remember and things to organize, so much that it becomes impossible to do. And then things like this happen. I don't know if you remember that, when Hawaii was almost attacked by North Korea about 3 years ago, when they discovered that this poor gentleman had left a post-it there with the password to the overall, emergency systems, right? So really what we're, trying to do with the 42 Crunch platform is helping, as Darren was saying, I heard this word multiple times about scale, right? How do you ensure your APIs are as secure as possible at scale? So with 10, with 100, with thousands, with the principles that Darren just basically explained, right? So what is the approach we're taking? Darren talked about, open API and documenting API. So indeed, we're helping, a lot of customers to make sure that their open API files, which is what they're starting with to document their APIs, their REST APIs, are as precise and as hardened as possible. So first, that they actually respect the specs, which is one aspect of the testing that we're doing, but also that they're actually respecting a whole set of security principles on how this documentation should be written. In here, we're going to help through that, not only security, but also helping development to deliver much better documented APIs to their consumers, which is a very critical aspect of this, right? So how do we leverage Open API? Really, so for us, this is the center of everything. That's what we use to validate that the API actually definition is proper. That's what we use to test the API contract. That's what we use to then protect the API. So we, along the life cycle of the API, leverage that definition as the unique source of truth, if you want, of what the API is actually doing. And through the different tools that we provide, starting from design time, we will be able to, ensure very early, right, that we have good APIs, that they're properly documented, properly tested, and properly protected. So really the virtuous loop, I think we really want to have, ideally every customer implement is this one, right? I'm a developer, I'm working on my code. That code, it could be whatever, C, Java, Node.js, Go, whichever language and framework you have decided to use to create your APIs, right? And there we'll have two approaches. We'll have people generating the open API file from annotations in the code, right? Or we'll have people taking what's called API first approach, whereby I'm first writing the interface and then I'm generating the code and the mockups and the testing and a lot of different things that OpenAPI allows you to do from basically that definition, right? Whichever way you choose, right? The idea is at some point in time, an open definition, API definition is going to be either generated or created, and we're going to push it into some code repository. It could be whatever, GitHub, it could be Bitbucket, it could be, SVN, whichever environment you're actually using. And when this happens, a pipeline starts up. So this is where, I think the automation part that Darren was talking about is really critical. If you want to scale, it needs to be automated. If every time a new API is being, created or deployed or modified, some manual step needs to happen, which we still see a lot, at a lot of places of customers and prospects calling us saying, well, I'm a one AppSec guy for 100 developers, and I just can't cope with this anymore because the developers are changing the code all the time, which is normal. That's what they do, and that's what they have to do. But I just don't have the time to finish a test and then have a new version of that same API to test again, and 100 more in the backlog that I need to test. That simply won't work, right? If this happens, first of all, as Darren was saying, the security teams are going to become a bottleneck because they're blocking the delivery of that API while they're testing it, which is their job. They have to do it. And second, as the API gets changed, maybe we're going to test one version, but the next one will not be tested. And we see this all the time. So rather, what we want to do is we push that code, we start something automatic. And there we're going to do some testing, some things with Roti2Crunch, like testing indeed that my code, my open API is actually properly hardened and described, that my code properly answers to testing through that open API, which you also do automatically. There you may have some container security you want to do automatically as well, some linting on the code. There's all kind of different security steps that you can put in there. But the key thing is making sure it's actually automated, right? Once you've passed those quality gates, I would say, then you can say, okay, now we want to take, in Roti2Crunch, we want to take that same open API file and we want to automate the deployment of a protection from that open API file, okay? So I can entirely, and transparently, which is, I think, very critical with all the customers working with, is in the end, that's what you want, right? You want security to be part of everyday's job of everyone. So it's normal thing. I just push my code, some security tests, some functional tests, some, load tests, integration tests, all kind of things are going to happen automatically. And if all of that is right, then I'm going to deploy my code. And in front of it, I'm going to deploy automatically a protection that will make sure that whatever is not conforming to that contract that we have defined will actually not flow through our APIs, right? So this is the positive security model that we put in place so that you know that whatever comes our way that has not been declared, documented, etc., will not go through, right? And then we kind of don't need to care about manual rules and following up threats and manually changing rules to accommodate those threats. We just have to concentrate everyone along the life cycle on creating proper interfaces, auditing them, and have the best definition possible and the best implementation possible of our APIs, right? And the whole thing is to do all of this without affecting the developer's productivity, because again, this is a critical thing. It is, work that has to be done, but it's a bit of extra work that development has to do to get those contracts right. But that's something they would have to do anyway. to do good documentation, as Darren was saying, making sure we care about also the internal consumer, not only about the external consumers, and making their work much easier and the APIs much easier to consume, right? So that's the virtual loops we really want to enable, right? And one thing which is, you know, critical across all the customers we're working with is how do we make that information, those reports that we build, that configuration, consumable from external systems? Because there's one thing that development teams really don't like, is to be pushed to go and fetch information and consume information outside of their, you know, their realm and where they work. And where do developers work? Well, they work in their IDEs, in the development environments, they work in their CI/CD, may have some custom reporting in place, but essentially it will be like dev tools and CI/CD. So that's why it's also very critical for us to have a platform that you can interact with from where you work. It could be IntelliJ, it could be that you have a plugin and you're working with SonarQube already. That's an example. It could be that you have you're using Bitbucket or GitLab to do your CI/CD, right? Make it, you know, I guess the goal is to make it as easy as possible for the development team to consume that information and act on that information from where, you know, they work, right? And reporting is also a very important part. So a lot of our large customers, what they do is they have like this single pane of glass of, this is the health of my APIs, I would say, right? And security is one part of that health. So being able to consume our auditing reports, our testing, scanning reports, and presenting them into that custom reporting. It could be some customers use Elasticsearch, others use, you know, I have application insights here from Azure. The reports, they come out through the REST API in JSON format. So wherever it is that you want to consume them from, you can actually do that, right? So it can be completely custom as well if you wanted to. And last but not least, we have actually a lot of customers doing this is through scripting, right? So not integration with specific system, but they just want to run some scripts and again, do that automatically. And that scripts can be in a CI/CD or somewhere else. And again, it's all about making sure you can consume that information and present it to the developers and to the security teams in the environments where they're used to work from, right? So that's what we do. And I'm just going to stop there. I don't know if, Darren, you wanted to quickly talk about what you do in terms of the reporting.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. So at Ford, as in reporting, we have, you know, a dashboard like you would expect, you know, a lot of large companies have, and the dashboard pulls in using the APIs of 42Crunch to pull in conformance scan results, as well as security audits, you know, would be a quality to you know, to look at how we're doing from a security perspective. And also we have a quality measure for our APIs, and there's a quality score of which, you know, without getting into the formula, 42Crunch is part of the quality score to measure how do we measure the quality of the API? Is it, you know, obviously APIs are designed for reuse and consumption, reliability, uptime, security. So all those come in together to measure the quality of our API products. So yeah, like you said, we're one of the typical companies that, you know, we look at multiple dimensions of the API, and the 40Crunch is one of those important dimensions from a security aspect.
Fantastic. All right. That's what I had just to quickly talk about the platform, and I think we should open the floor for questions. Christine, we have a few.
All right, guys, I am back. We have some questions here. So there's these first couple, or these first three, Darren, they came in when you were speaking. So
Okay.
here's the first one. Assuming this was a new process or workflow and set of practices, how long did it take to migrate the company from the old way of doing things to the new way?
Honestly, we're still in process of doing it. So you can imagine, you know, here's the thing I say, that when you look at a thing of Ford Motor Company, is think of it as if you're in a harbor and you have a fleet of ships. and you want to get all those ships to actually turn simultaneously. Well, each of those ships have different captains on it. So somehow or another, you got to get to all the captains of the ship that were turning, to be able to do that. So some captains are better than others. Some people are further along, and some captains are busier. So honestly, I expect this whole thing to get us all these things I talked about in there. Some teams are there and they're completely integrated. Other teams are at different stages. You can imagine over 10,000 developers at Ford. This is roughly a year process to truly get all these things to the point where I'll be happy where everything it needs to be.
It's actually quite fast, I think. 1 year for 10,000 developers,
All right, great. Next question is, how does enforcing a strict conformance of input data improve your developers' work experience? And how can developers be motivated to define strict data validation processes?
Okay, I would put it back in the developer team. The example I gave on that is, how many times do you as a developer get an email, an IM from someone saying, I don't understand how your API works, okay? I don't know what good data looks like. I don't know what good responses look like, okay? So defining your input, okay, your contract, and your output will actually make your life as a developer easier. It'll make you can focus on actually doing your work as opposed to getting all the questions from people consuming your APIs, your internal developers. And go back to the analogy I gave with Google. If you want to scale, you better do it. You'll never scale if everyone has to come to talk to you to understand who you are or what good data is, those types of things. So yes, does it work? Yes, I'm not going to lie. It is work to do this and saying, okay, yes, this is a vehicle VIN 17 characters. It has a regular expression that looks like that. I get it. But once you do that, no matter who you give that to, okay, a developer or anyone can start consuming that and understand what the capability is. What are the expectations of me as a consumer of it? What am I going to give you and what you're going to give me back? Plus, then from the security that's on the quality side. On the security side, I want to understand when someone does something. So if a VIN 17 characters, when someone puts 100 character VIN in, how does API behave? Does it do a stack dump? Does it crash? Does it pass it on to the data? Who knows? Okay. So the idea of, those negative tests, attack tests, are very, very important for me as a security, because trust me, the attackers, they're not going to do the happy path testing. They're going to try to probe at the edges and whatnot and say, hey, what happens when I do this? Oh, look, I got a stack dump. Here's some SQL code I can look at now. Or here's whatever. I found out you're using this framework. This framework has CVEs. So now I know how to attack your APIs because you're using this framework, and this framework has its own CVEs. So those are the reasons why it's important from a security perspective.
Great. And here is the last one that came in during your presentation. What developer challenges remain unsolved in your company's API environment where you think providers of API security solutions can and should address?
This is still a relatively new industry, the API security, because the OWASP, only came on that. So like any tool, I said, I like to be able to have, think of it like a vehicle. You have you as a driver vehicle, we give you abilities to adjust your vehicle, the climate, the temperature, the fan speed, because, you may like it warmer than me or whatnot. So having those abilities, if I can pull these levels or turn these knobs, that will allow me to tune it and adjust it to the particular either technology, framework, whatever the thing happens to be, because we are not homogeneous in our development. We use lots of different frameworks. Some of them are better than others. So I look for those things that we can control, or our delivery team can turn those knobs and buttons, to make it a more enjoyable experience for them that works in their process.
Thank you. All right, Isabel, this one's for you.
Mm-hmm.
What is the first step to start securing APIs?
Oh, wow. That's a broad question. The first step, I guess the first step is to, back to what Darren is saying, is to know what your APIs are, right? Because you cannot secure what we don't know about. So having this catalog and understanding the data, again, that flows through those APIs is very important. Again, I think one of the key things that we like to insist on, it's very critical. That's why there is an OWASP top 10 for APIs and an OWASP top 10 general for web apps, right? Is APIs are all about data, right? So as Darren is saying as well, from a cybercrime point of view, that's why this is also the new secret graal for cybercrime, is because the data is what those guys are after. So in APIs, they're just about data. So knowing your APIs and knowing the data for me is the first step, right? And then doing, I think what we're doing, which is to have something that allows you to describe thoroughly and fine grain what that API actually does. And then from there, everything can flow. A lot of things can flow from there, right? And this is the AppSec level. Then you know, I don't know, Darren, if you want to add anything to that.
No, first thing, you can't protect what you don't know.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably the biggest thing. And then, you know, at the end of the day, you know, large companies, if bad things were to happen, breaches, we have to disclose to our shareholders, to our investors, to the government, because we're a highly regulated industry. So we really have to know, you know, what's going on with these things. You know, think about it. We have APIs that you can do, you know, wonderful things. Ford Pass to command and control to your Ford vehicle. You can lock, unlock, remote start, does great things. Okay. However, you know, if that were to get breached or other types of things, you can imagine you as a consumer, it would not be good if, you know, Darren could access your vehicle and do stuff to your vehicle. I don't think you would want that. So we really take care of stuff like that for things that do things such as command and control, have PII sensitive data. You really have to understand, because at the end of the day, not all APIs are created equal. Understand, you know, do that prioritize based as to what am I going to attack first.
Yep. Indeed. Yep.
All right, we're coming up on the hour, so we have time for one more question. Isabel, this came in while you were speaking.
Mm-hmm.
A positive security approach is also possible with web application firewalls. Why do you think this has never experienced any large-scale adoption by developers, and how can open API specs make a difference in comparison to WAFs?
Oh, well, that's the key thing is scale again, right? So yes, you have the ability to do positive security in WAFs. You have for the longest time, right? The question is how, right? So right now, if you take many of the WAFs from the market, you will have to kind of go manually and create rules for every single piece of information that flows through that WAF. And this is where it doesn't scale. So because again, back to the data, because it really everything is at that level. So if you take a WAF today, and then so let's say you have this VIN number, right? This unique ID for a car that we're talking about. When a request comes in and it says VIN and it says this is a string, right? Cool. Unless there is a rule that says, oh, by the way, this VIN thing, this specific character, field that you're going to receive, this is a VIN and this is a structure of a VIN and it needs to be 17 digits and it has this structure, et cetera, right? So if you have to go and program basically whatever it is, a WAF or others, to every single field, tell it what it is, what are you going to do? You're going to write what you normally write in an open API file, right? The difference is you don't have to do this as a security person as well. Traditionally, WAFs has been handled and managed and controlled by security people. Their value proposition that I think OpenAPI is bringing is to say the work of declaring and defining what the API does is really on the developer side, because they know what the APIs do and what the data is. That's their knowledge, that's their realm, right? So we're going to leverage all that knowledge and we're going to use that in the form of OpenAPI to apply this positive security model, right? And then you have something that scales. Every time the API is changing, you change that definition, you validate that that definition is right, and then you use that definition to actually protect your API. So this is this virtuous loop that I was talking about, right? So it's essentially the problem of scaling and manual configuration versus automation again.
All right, thanks, Isabel. And all of you for joining us for this webinar. Thank you, Darren, for presenting. Are there any last thoughts?
I just want to thank Darren. I think it was fantastic that you accepted to share your experience of such a large company with people, and wish all a great day.
Right.
Thank you all so much.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.